Back when I used to read gaming magazines, one of the publications I always made it a point to read every month was Retro Gamer. It introduced me to many things I knew little to nothing about, such as European computers, or Japanese exclusive consoles like the WonderSwan. It also featured many games I was unfamiliar with. One of these was a Game Boy Advance title called Rebelstar Tactical Command, a tactical RPG that focused on long-ranged attacks such as guns and grenades, rather than the melee attacks and magic found in most other games in the genre. A year later, I was browsing through the game section at Half Price Books, and lo and behold, there it was. A cart-only copy of Rebelstar. After snatching it up, I popped it in for a few minutes to see what it was like, and really enjoyed what I played. However, I didn't play any more of it at the time because the unrelenting backlog got in the way. 5 years later, I decided to give this game a proper playthrough, and was shocked to discover that not a single soul on YouTube has reviewed this one. So, once again, I'm going to have to be the first person to review a game on the site. The game's storyline centers around a young man named Jarrell, who is given command of a small rebel army. The group is trying to rid the Earth of alien creatures called Aurelians. The Aurelians implant all citizens with mind-reading chips at birth, and then abduct them once they reach the age of 30. There are two other alien races called Zorn and Freylar that you will also be fighting against. When Jarrell sleeps at night, he is often visited by an Aurelian in his dreams that seems to be opposed to what the other Aurelians are doing to the human race. To be honest, I kind of tuned out for most of the story. I wouldn't say that it's bad, but I had a hard time finding a reason to care about the story or other party members. Luckily, if you don't care for the plot, you can just hit the start button to skip ahead to the next mission. However, you should pay attention at the beginning of each chapter when your commander briefs you on the next mission. There are a few missions that will require you to handle things in a very specific way, such as destroying eggs with knives, or using grenades to take out generators. So it's always a good idea to pay attention during briefings. I've said in the past that I'm not a fan of forced tutorials, so I was a little peeved when I realized that the first few missions are unskippable tutorials. That being said, these are some really well-made tutorials that do a great job of explaining this game's mechanics. At first glance, this may look like your typical tactical RPG. However, you will realize just how different this is once you click on a character. You will see a ton of options, and it may be a lot to take in, but after a few battles, everything will become second nature. Each party member has their own AP gauge, which is used for both movement and character actions. This makes each party member's turn very flexible. You can move ahead a few spaces, take a shot, and then duck behind cover. Or you could charge forward 12 spaces. You could also decide to stay put and take 3 or 4 shots at the aliens. There's a lot you can do with an AP system like this, and it's too bad more tactical RPGs don't use a similar system. When you select the move command, you'll notice 3 different colors in your movement range. Orange means that you can move there and still be able to use whatever shot type you choose. Yellow means you will only be able to select actions that consume less AP. And green means you cannot do anything. There are between 2 and 4 shot types you can use. Snapshots are a quick shot that uses a small amount of AP. Aim shots are more precise but will consume more action points. There are also burst variations of each, which will fire multiple bullets of each shot type. In this game you get to use something called Overwatch. Break out the loot boxes! Seriously though, Overwatch is one of the most useful commands in the game. It basically puts you in a defensive position that lets you target any enemy that enters your field of vision. Well, that is as long as the enemy uses more AP than you have to use for your Overwatch. You won't be able to see all the enemies on the map like in most other tactical RPGs. This game employs a fog of war mechanic. What that means is the aliens are only visible on the battlefield when one of your characters can see them. This makes Rebelstar one of the more challenging tactical RPGs, since you never know just how many enemy units you are actually dealing with. One thing you will have to pay attention to in combat is each party member's morale gauge, which is under the AP and hit point gauges. When this drops down to 0, that unit will enter an uncontrollable panic state where they randomly run around the battlefield. Not only is it bad to not be able to attack with that character, but they may also end their turn on a tile where they are vulnerable to enemy fire. The main thing that causes morale to go down is when another party member gets knocked out, so obviously it's a good idea to keep all your characters alive. The unit with the highest command rating will have a rally command that can restore the morale of anyone in range, which can be useful for avoiding panic. For the most part, combat is great. However, there are a few annoyances with it. The first is that you cannot pass through your teammates. So you have to be very careful about where you place your units, as they can all get stuck behind you in a doorway or narrow corridor. Another is how there is no info on environmental objects that you are supposed to destroy. So when you're assigned one of these missions and start trying to destroy these objects, you have no idea if what you're doing is actually effective. The most annoying issue is the camera. For one, you cannot change the angle, which seems to be a common problem with other tactical RPGs on the GBA. This can make it tough to see enemies at times, and also makes moving around a pain. Another problem is that the camera likes to stay where it was when you ended your turn. So enemies can move around in and out of the line of sight of some of your squad, but you'll never know because the camera remained on the last unit you moved. So it is always a good idea to move the cursor to a spot on the map that you think enemies will be at before hitting start to end your turn. There is no permadeath in the game, which is great because this game is hard enough already. One thing to remember though is that you cannot let any party member get knocked out in the first 11 missions. So while you don't have to worry about losing anyone permanently, you still have to be really careful with where you place your troops. When your characters level up, they'll receive stat boosts in up to 4 categories. They will also get a bonus point that you can distribute on whatever skill you choose. The game autosaves at the end of every chapter. In addition to that, the developers were nice enough to let you save at any time during battle. What's to stop you from taking advantage of this and save scumming your way to victory? Hang on, I'll tell you in a minute. Yep, these are some insanely long load times for a GBA cart. In fact, I can't remember very many cartridge games that even have any load times, so it's quite a shock to have to sit here and wait 10 seconds for your file to load. When you make it to Chapter 12, you'll finally get the option to change equipment. These aren't the typical upgrades like other RPGs where one weapon is clearly better than the other. They are all fairly equal, and you need to weigh the pros and cons of each one and find a weapon that will work for you. You also have to think about the weight of your equipment. Too much weight will reduce how much AP your units get per turn. Armor options become available in Chapter 13. One strange thing about the game is that there is not a single boss battle. Pretty much every other tactical RPG has them, so it was weird not having to deal with them here. It's not necessarily a bad thing, just odd. When it comes to the game's graphics, they are alright. None of the battlefields or sprites are amazing, just kinda average. The animations, on the other hand, are really choppy. The character art is a bit hit or miss. I'm not a fan of Jarrell's character portrait. His derby smile makes it look like he has no upper lip. Some of the other party members look pretty good though. As for other art in the game, I really like the title screen, which gets recycled on the lengthy loading screens. Seriously, why does it take so long to load a battle on a Game Boy Advance title? Maybe it's because the battlefields are so large. As for audio, the game does have a nice soundtrack. There isn't a ton of music here, but everything has a tense feel that complements the battles very well. There are 25 missions in total, and I enjoyed the first 24 quite a bit. However, the final battle is pure garbage. Of course, the objective is to destroy all the enemies on the map, and also any enemies that enter from the reinforcement tiles. While you're doing that, the aliens are trolling your party with psionic attacks that put your character into a panic state. They will also try to stun you, which can be both good or bad depending on how severely the unit is stunned. If they get severely stunned, they will actually fall to the ground and the enemy will ignore them for a few turns. So in a matter of turn or two, your team of 9 can be reduced to 5 or 6 active characters. This makes it really hard to keep your health up, damage the enemies, and stay behind cover. This fight is actually worse than the final battle of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, where you had to deal with 3 laws restricting what you could do. At least in that one, you could use law cards to negate the restrictions. But here, there really isn't anything you can do to protect yourself from the never-ending onslaught of psionic attacks. You just have to keep trying and hopefully get lucky enough to win. Despite my hatred of the final battle of the game, Rebelstar Tactical Command is still a great tactical RPG that I would definitely recommend playing. It may not have the most interesting story or characters, but it does have some really enjoyable combat, and it's nice to play something that is quite different from other games in the genre. If you'd like to pick up a copy, it is really affordable. I've seen some complete in box copies sell for less than 15 bucks, and cart onlys go for about $6. A great price for a great game. And that will do it for this one. As always, I want to thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you next time.